Sorry about that. My name is Leila Claire Carroll, and I am going to be going over the wrongful conviction of James Kleppelberg. So this all started in March of 1984 in the early morning hours. A fire started in an apartment building on Hermitage Avenue on the south side of Chicago. So it was about a 3-story building, relatively small, and it started in the vacant first floor. 6 people unfortunately died, including Elva Lupercio and her 5 children, Santos, Sonia, Christabel, Yadira, and Annabelle. So her husband, Santos, actually managed to escape the fire by jumping from the 2nd story, but he suffered a fractured skull and multiple burns all over his body. So during the initial investigation, the fire was considered an accident. The fire burned down the entire building, however, no one else was injured. It also burned down an adjacent building as well as one other. Francis Burns, who was a first responder at the time, believed that it was arson because of the burn patterns. However, Francis was not an actual firefighter. He was in training, which is very important to keep in mind. So in 1987, Dwayne Glasgow enters the scene. He was arrested on the charges of burglary, theft, and violation of probation. So he actually knew James Kleppelberg. They kind of ran in the same circle. So during his questioning, he said that he saw James Kleppelberg the night of the fire all the way back in 1984. He said that he saw him while peeking through an attic window at a nearby house and said that Kleppelberg was walking back and forth from the scene. He also stated that they were both at the house partying that night, and Glasgow also said that he was on drugs the night of the fire, but he ended up avoiding jail time at all by stating that he saw James at the scene in 1984. So again in 1987, in December, the Chicago Police Bomb and Arson Unit was sent to the north side of Chicago to investigate 2 car fires. So they were actually called in by James Kleppelberg, who worked at the scene as a security guard. So when police got there, they started questioning Kleppelberg about the 84 apartment fire. So he was 22 at this time, so in 1987 he was 22, which would have made him 18 at the time of the Hermitage Avenue apartment fire in 1984. So he actually admitted later on he later admitted to setting all of the fires and was indicted on 1 count of arson and 6 counts of murder in January of 1988. So here's a picture of James Kleppelberg. This was his original mugshot. So in November of 1988, Kleppelberg's confession was ordered suppressed by a judge, as Kleppelberg claimed he had been beaten during the interrogation. He had bruises near his kidneys and he was urinating blood, so this made his statement coerced. However, the prosecution still fought for the death penalty, and he was convicted in 1989, but his sentence was reduced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And he was actually serving a total of 6 life sentences, and most of that was part of the testimony of Francis Burns saying that he thought it was arson. So in October of 1989, Kleppelberg was awaiting sentencing, and his bond was reduced to $25,000. So his mother paid it, and he was released, and his mom came and picked him up, and they went to Georgia. However, a jail employee had been given $3,000 worth of cocaine to change Kleppelberg's record. So it wasn't ever released who paid him that money, or technically gave him all that cocaine, or why, but Kleppelberg was arrested a few days later in Georgia and brought all the way back up to Chicago, Illinois. So he actually tried to appeal his conviction quite a few times. Starting in December of 1993, he appealed his conviction to the Illinois Supreme Court, but it was denied. In October 1994, He tried to file for post-conviction relief, stating that his trial was unfair, but a full 10 years later, the judge ended up not granting the relief in 2004. So in May of 2009, another post-conviction relief was filed, but this time it was not filed by Kleppelberg, it was filed by the attorneys at the Exoneration Project at the University of Chicago Law School. This sparked a whole new interest in Kleppelberg's case, and new evidence was released as well. So, aerial photographs were released which proved that Dwayne Glasgow could not have seen Kleppelberg at the Hermitage Avenue apartments that night, because there was actually a building that would have obstructed his view as he was looking out of the attic window. It was also reported that Glasgow was angry with Kleppelberg as he had just begun dating Glasgow's ex-girlfriend, so it could have been an incentive to just, in addition to getting him off the hook, but just an incentive to say that it was James Kleppelberg. And as science has progressed, it has shown that there is no concrete evidence that the cause of the fire was arson, so this proves that Francis Burns' theory was false, especially because the building completely burned to the ground and there was pretty much nothing left. And so, in addition, a woman named Isabel Ramos was charged with arson in 1984, a few blocks away from the Hermitage Avenue fire. It did not say how close in time it was to the fire, but she was arrested for a whole separate count of arson a few blocks away. And she had been heavily drinking for about 12 hours, going around to different taverns around town. And she said that she did not remember if she set the Hermitage Avenue fire, but she also stated that she could have done it, just wouldn't have remembered it because she was so drunk. So this led to his release in May of 2012. A Cook County judge dropped all charges against James Kleppelberg, and he was released on May 30th after serving 24 years in prison. So he actually had 3 children whom he lost touch with, and even found out that he had 3 grandchildren that he never even knew about. His mother passed away of cancer while he was behind bars, and his wife ended up divorcing him while he was incarcerated, and his siblings were lost to him, as he said in an interview. So after his release, he moved to Indiana, where he is looking for work and hotel maintenance. He stated, "Things just as simple as finding a job is going to be extremely challenging, because how do you explain a 25-year gap in your resume?" So here is actually a video that I found on YouTube of him describing personally what it did to his relationships and his mental health throughout after being exonerated.
If you do not have a support structure or family or something, they open the door and say, "Go home." You lose contact with family, people move on with their lives. So when they open the door and say, "Go home now," you look at them and, your first question is, what home? You're talking about a quarter of a century. Think about how much has changed in that time. What a cell phone looked like 25 years ago, a computer. There's no training for people like me because the state doesn't view us as ever getting out. When you have a natural life sentence in the Illinois Department of Corrections, you're not afforded no education, no schooling, no resume training, no pre-start, no nothing, because in most instances, you don't know when you're being released. It just happens. One day a judge orders you free and that's it. So the state doesn't waste resources on preparing you for your release date because in their eyes you don't have one.
So I thought that video was very interesting, and I couldn't find a lot of information other than this about how he was doing after being exonerated. So I just thought I'd put it in as fully his words. Um, so the last slide are my sources, which a lot of them are Chicago news articles, as this case was pretty local. It didn't really reach anywhere else, so it was kind of difficult to find information on him as well as just the case in general. So, thank you.